28. I want to read verse 1 through verse 4. Let's read these verses together. How blessed is everyone who fears the Lord, who walks in his way. When you shall eat of the fruit of your hands, you will be happy, and it will be well with you. Your wife shall be like a fruitful vine within your house, your children like olive plants around your table. Behold, for thus shall the man be blessed who fears the Lord. I'm not going to have you turn to your neighbor, but I want you to look up toward heaven and shout to yourself. You don't say it real loud, because we social distancing, and we take care of things. Is that Kivaris? Several months ago, Kivaris had surgery to repair damage that was done to his eye in an accident. He had lost sight in that eye. Do I have to say it anymore? I'm sorry. But he's in church, looking at us. That means that God will hear and he will answer prayer. Bless the Lord, oh my soul. Y'all done caught me on the wrong thing. I want you to look up toward heaven and tell the Lord, ain't no daddy like the one I've got. Amen. May you see in the Lord's presence. So that's what I want to talk about this morning. Ain't no daddy like the one I've got. Reverend Dr. Walter L. Pearson, who went home to be with the Lord, sadly, on June 7th of this year at the age of 74 years old. I highly encourage you to go to YouTube and search for Dr. Walter L. Pearson. He was one of the greatest preachers that I have ever come in contact with. Perhaps his greatest strength was his proficiency in telling stories. One of the most memorable stories, Sister Erica, that I heard Dr. Pearson tell was when he first got his driver's license. He said to his dad that in celebration of acquiring his driver's license, he only wanted one thing. He wanted permission to take his girlfriend on a date, and he wanted to drive his daddy's car. His dad, Walter Pearson Sr., agreed that he would allow him to take his girlfriend on a date, driving his daddy's car, with one stipulation. And that is, his daddy had to be in the car with them. He said, because just because you got a license doesn't mean that you know everything there is to know about driving. They go, they pick the girlfriend up, they're headed on the date. Now, this was during the time, Sister Pat, when they didn't have these center consoles in the middle of the front seats. They had what we call bench seats. There was just one long seat. I believe some relationships will be a whole lot better if you take the center console out. Some of y'all remember sitting so close together, you couldn't even tell it was two people in there. Just looked like one person with one real big head. Now y'all so far apart, somebody about to fall out the car while it's going down the road. But Dr. Pearson's dad had a car with one of those long bench seats. Pearson II was in the driver's seat. His girlfriend was seated right next to him, and Pearson Sr. was seated next to the passenger side door. Everything was going well as they traveled on their way to their date, until a storm arose and rain started beating down on the highway and beating down on the car. Pearson Sr. looked over at Pearson Jr. and saw how tightly he started gripping the steering wheel. As they traveled, they were coming up to a curve, and all of them noticed that when they reached the bend of the curve, a semi-tractor trailer would also be in the bend of the curve at the very same time. Pearson Jr. is struggling with a number of things. One thing he's struggling with is he has driven before, but never in the rain. He had driven before, but never had he gone around a curve while a semi-tractor trailer was bending the same curve at the same time. The third thing he struggled with was he didn't want to be embarrassed in front of his girlfriend. He's thinking to himself, maybe I need to pull over and let my dad get behind the wheel. The closer they got to the curve, the closer they got to the rain-soaked semi-tractor trailer. Much to his surprise, Walter Pearson Sr. reached past the girlfriend, reached past Pearson Jr., grabbed hold of the steering wheel and helped him navigate it around the curve. That's what a real daddy does. A real daddy may not take you out of the driver's seat, but when it becomes more than you can handle, a real daddy knows how to reach over past whatever your circumstances are, take hold of the wheel and help you navigate to a safe place. The same kind of dad, or a similar kind of dad, is found here in Psalm number 128. It is in this psalm that we are given information on what it takes to be a real and successful father. I have just one major theme that I want to share with you in today's Father's Day celebration, and it is simply this: real successful fatherhood requires priorities. Real successful fatherhood requires priorities, which means if you have spinning rims and your children don't have dental insurance, you have some misplaced priorities. If you buy a brand new TV but your cable is off, you have some misplaced priorities. If you buy a new vehicle and can't afford the gas, you have some misplaced priorities. Real and successful fatherhood requires priorities. Psalm number 128 is actually part of a collection of psalms which are called Psalms of Degrees or Songs of Ascent. That means that these are words that were set to music, and God's people would sing these songs on the way to the Lord's house. I've always noticed, Sister Tamika, that you can always have better church when you get ready for church on your way to church. It's hard to get your mind on singing if it ain't even been on singing your whole trip getting to the Lord's house. So they didn't get ready for church when they got to church. They got ready for church on the way to church. Minister Lawson read it earlier. I was glad when they just said to me, "Let us go to the house of the Lord." My heart leaped for joy at the mention of going to the Lord's house. Real and successful fatherhood requires priorities. Pastor Thorpe, will you tell us what those priorities are? I will for $9.95. No, I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to give it to you for free. I don't charge on whatever Sunday this is. I'm going to hand you 4 priorities. And brother, here is the first one. The first priority, if you're going to be a real and successful father, brother, fall in love with him. It's really found in verse 1, the importance of every man falling in love first with God. Look at what the psalmist says in verse 1. How blessed is everyone who fears the Lord, who walks in his ways. That word blessed there is taken from the Hebrew word Ashrei. It is spelled A-S-H-R-E. It literally means to be happy. God says if you really want to be happy, it begins with fearing the Lord and walking in his ways. Fear the Lord. That means, let me just throw this out to sisters for free on Father's Day. You don't have to be afraid of a man who fears the Lord. Because what that means is there's some things he will not do to you, not just because of who you are, but because of what he knows about God. You want a man, see, some of y'all say, I think I'm going to marry him because I got a lot of brothers. Your brothers ain't going to be with you all the time. And you, instead of marrying a man because you have a brother, you need to marry a brother because he fears the Lord. Are y'all here? Trying to find a Mercedes, but you need a BMW. That's a brother man working on getting himself right with the Lord. Blessed or happy is everyone who fears the Lord, who walks in his ways. Now, you can't walk in his ways if you don't know his ways. Pastor, you didn't see him. His hair was so curly. Give it a minute. Pastor, you didn't see him. His abs were rippled like a washboard. Give him some time. Yes, sir. They'll still be under them. You do all the planks you want. They'll be under there. Just be all the stuff that stack up on top of it. Brother, fall in love with him. Let me push it a step further. If you're going to be a real and successful father, brother, not only do you need to fall in love with him, but you need to fall in love with you. And one of our problems in this modern age is people who are trying to commit to loving other people and they haven't learned how to love themselves. You mad at the whole world because it looked like they don't want to be around you. But truth is, you was by yourself who didn't like you that much. But Rob, a man was stranded on a deserted island. He had been there for years, and finally he was rescued. When his rescuers came to get him off of the island, they noticed that he had constructed several buildings around the island. They saw one building that was way off by itself in one of the most quiet and serene areas of the island. And they said to the man, "What did you do in that structure?" The man responded that whenever I wasn't feeling well, that was like my convalescent home. I would go there until I felt better. Then they noticed a structure that appeared to be his living quarters, and he agreed, yes, this is where I stayed most of the time. Then they saw a structure that had a steeple on it and a cross at the top. And they said, I bet we know what that is. The man said, you are right, that's my church. Before they made it off of the island, they saw another building with a steeple and a cross on top and said, well, what's that? The man said, that's the church I used to go to. On the island by himself. And fell out with himself so much until he had two different churches. Loving God is important, but you ought to allow your love for God to help you so cultivate yourself until you fall in love with yourself. Remember, in verse 1, he says, blessed is everyone who fears the Lord and who walks in his ways. But look at verse 2. When you shall eat of the fruit of your hands, you will be happy and it will be well with you. When you love and learn how to take care of you. Ma'am, don't let him put his name on you if he ain't got his name on nothing else. I'm sorry, y'all. Come on the wrong Sunday. Light will come somebody else's name. The phone will come somebody else's name. Oh. You got to be happy by yourself. You got to fall in love with you and God, honoring each other. Verse 2, when you shall eat of the fruit of your hands, you will be happy, and it will be well with you. Too many brothers looking for a come up. They walking through the mall. You think they're checking your dimensions. They ain't concerned about 36, 24, 36. They don't care whether you're a brick house. You can be a schoolhouse. That ain't what they looking for. They ain't looking for 36, 24, 36. They want to know how close you get to 800. They want to know what their FICO score is, your Fair Isaacs. They want to know what your Beacon score is. Whole lot of folks looking for a come up. Can you cook? Can you buy? And you get married 6 months later, you don't make bread like my mama made her bread. And the wife says, you ain't been bringing home dough like my daddy brought home dough. You bring more dough around here, we can make more bread. Y'all bad, y'all big man, little man. Brother, fall in love with him. Brother, fall in love with you. Here's the third one. Brother, fall in love with her. I love this first statement in verse 3. Your wife shall be like a fruitful vine within your house. It is a unique verse. You read this same verse in the King James Version. It says, your wife shall be a fruitful vine by the sides of your house. I struggled for hours and hours in study, in rationalizing why would one translation say that the wife is like a vine beside the house, and most modern translations say that she's like a vine within the house. The revelation is normally vines grow on the outside of the house, but this is a woman who is so well taken care of until she grows on the inside of the house. One of my social media friends, whom I have never met, even though I understand that she and I come from the same city. Her name is Tashikia Paris Harris, or Perry Harris, Tashikia Perry Harris. She leads an organization that empowers young women. And more than 9 years ago, she went through a divorce and often speaks about what it is like to co-parent with her former husband and her young son. Recently, she got married, and before she got married, when they got ready to go on their first date, she announced to the young man, who just happened to be a former NFL football player, she announced to him, she said that I am saving my body for my future husband. And she said, if I slip and mess up with you, it will be proof that you are not my husband. Then after they got married, she made this statement. She said, I didn't give him a chance to sweep me off my feet until I knew he wouldn't drop me. Fall in love with him. Fall in love with you. Then you are fit to fall in love with her. And what I mean by that Nobody is looking for liabilities. Everybody is looking for some assets. You say, Pastor, I'm a work in progress. Well, fix all the stuff you need to work on before you start connecting with somebody else. Because if your motor is bad and my transmission is bad, ain't either one of us going nowhere. Because if somebody get the transmission fixed and the motor's still bad, you're still sitting still. If the motor is fixed and the transmission is bad, you're still sitting still. All y'all do is sit up in there with the radio on. But ain't nobody going nowhere. What y'all doing in there? This is loud car. Y'all can't go nowhere either. Well, we gotta get this straight. Shouldn't y'all have got the transmission fixed before y'all all piled up in there? How about you social distancing? Your transmission broke. You can't go nowhere. Brother, fall in love with him. Brother, fall in love with you. Brother, fall in love with her. Here's the last thing. Brother, fall in love with them. Not just part of them, but all of them. And this speaks of your children. Fall in love with your children, not numerically, but summarily. Which means it's not that you just fall in love with each one of them, you fall in love with everything that's connected to them. Look at the rest of verse 3. After he says, your wife shall be like a fruitful vine within your house, he then says, your children like olive plants around your table. You got a wife who's so productive until she's growing like a vine. You have children who are so special until they are like tender olive plants spread out around your table. In Jewish culture, there was nothing more precious than the oil that came from the crushing of olives. That means that the key to Jewish life, according to the psalmist, is wrapped up in healthy parenting that produces healthy children. Well, Pastor, how many parts do my children have? I'm so glad you asked. Let me give you 3. Here's the first one. When you fall in love with them, you need to fall in love with their peace. Your children should not have a childhood that they will need counseling to recover from. You say, well, Pastor, I had a rough childhood. Well, fix you first before you mess them up. Pastor, my parents didn't know how to talk to me. Well, if you know they didn't know how to talk to you, learn how to talk to your own. Pastor, my parents didn't affirm me. Well, if you know what they didn't do, make certain that you do the right things with them. Psalm number 128 is actually a continuation or a sequel to Psalm 127. Look at what you find in Psalm 127, beginning in verse 1. There the psalmist says, unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain who build it. Unless the Lord guards the city, the watchman keeps awake in vain. It is vain for you to rise up early, to retire late, to eat the bread of painful labors. For he gives to his beloved even in his sleep. Behold, children are a gift of the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Like arrows in the hands of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. How blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. Some of y'all just say, Pastor, I didn't know I had a quiver. The quiver was simply the container that the arrows were kept in. And the Lord is saying, if you got a bunch of arrows that you can shoot, you ought to have a bunch of arrows in the container that holds them. He says, so are the children of one's youth. How blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. They will not be ashamed when they speak with their enemies in the gate. That last part of that verse refers to the confidence that parents ought to have in the stability of their children. That means mom and dads especially on Father's Day, you got to be careful how you raise them, because one day you may need them to help take care of you.
All right, all right. Yeah.
And if they won't bring you a Coke now, what happens when you laying up in a hospital bed with an itch you can't scratch? So be careful how you raise them. Quit telling them how much insurance you got. When it comes time for them to turn stuff off. They say, now we got a 70-30 chance. There's a 70% chance they're going to pull out of it. There's a 30% chance it may go all the way. Your kids say, well, they lived a good life. Have mercy, Jesus. You be looking at them 1 hour. Well, what you just said, y'all getting ready to turn me off? Fall in love with them, all of them, their peace. Look back at Psalm 128, verse 4. The psalmist says, behold, for thus shall the man be blessed who fears the Lord. Verse 5 and 6, the Lord bless you from Zion, and may you see the prosperity of Jerusalem all the days of your life. Indeed, may you see your children's children. Peace be upon Israel. That means you ought to secure and allow God to maintain their peace. Well, you ought to fall in love with all of them, not just their peace. You ought to fall in love with their place. Notice over and over again in verse 4, verse 5, and verse 6, the psalmist speaks about Jerusalem. That as this father is committed to God, committed to himself, committed to his wife, committed to his children, the father also recognizes that you cannot raise spiritually blessed children in a morally bankrupt environment. And one of the things we're learning about our beloved country, we thought we were doing better in so many different areas. But we're learning now the words that Harry Belafonte says that Martin Luther King Jr. spoke to him prior to his passing, was that he feared he was emancipating people into a burning building. That I thought I was helping them get out of one thing, but I'm helping them into something that is perhaps more toxic than what they are coming out of. All over this city, Gainesville and Alachua County, group of pastors who met this past week and the week before all decided that we would preach from the same passage. I want to share that passage with you now. It is in the Old Testament book of Amos. Amos chapter 5, verse 21 through verse 24. And it drives home this theme that if you are building peace in your children, you have to invest in the place you are raising your children in. Because it is impossible to raise spiritually blessed children in a morally bankrupt environment. So look at Amos chapter 5, verse 21 through verse 24, at the words that the Lord spoke through Amos to his own people as he tried to correct them and pull them out of destruction. God had gotten tired of their hypocrisy. God had gotten tired of the fact that they knew how to church, they just didn't know how to live. Verse 21, God says, I reject your festivals, nor do I delight in your solemn assemblies. Message Bible says, I hate your conferences and your conventions. Verse 22, even though you offer up to me burnt offerings and your grain offerings, I will not accept them, and I will not even look at the peace offerings of your fatlings. Take away from me the noise of your songs. I will not even listen to the sound of your harps. Here's the response. But let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Which means if you're going to protect their peace, you got to also protect their place. That means get involved. Get involved. Get involved. Get involved. You take time off to shop. You take time off for any recreational thing you want to do. But none of your children's teachers know what your face looks like. Get involved. Get involved. God says fall in love with him. Fall in love with you, fall in love with her, fall in love with them, but all of them. Fall in love with their peace, fall in love with their place. Here's the last thing and I'm done. Fall in love with their posterity. Posterity. Somebody say, Pastor, I ain't real familiar with that word. That's all right. You're in church. You like to learn here. Us like to learn. It's bad grammar, but it sounds fun when I said it. Us like to learn. Posterity simply means your heritage. That not only does God want to bless you, God wants to bless everything that comes from you. Look at Psalm 128 and verse 6. The psalmist says, indeed, may you see your children's children. Peace be upon Israel. Which means the Lord not only wants to bless what's in your house, he wants to bless everything coming out of your house. One of my dear friends, I can't wait to tell you more about him in some months and weeks and months to come. Reverend Dr. James B. Sampson, who is the former president of the Florida General Baptist Convention. He lives in the beautiful city of Jacksonville, where he pastors the new Mount Zion Baptist Church. Let me tell you a couple of things about Dr. Sampson that I believe are central to what I'm trying to share from Psalm number 128. Dr. James B. Sampson hates roller coasters. But when his daughter turned 13, Tay-Tay just turned 21. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Just turned 21. Dr. Sampson's daughter, when she turned 13, has a love for roller coasters. And she said, Daddy, I don't want but one thing for my birthday. Won't you take me to Orlando, to the theme park, so we can ride roller coasters. Mind you, her daddy hates roller coasters. But because he loves his daughter, wanted to fulfill her request on her 13th birthday, to Orlando they went, on to the roller coaster they got. This strange thing they do, Brother Thomas, on roller coasters. This thing bothers me. For people who hate roller coasters, this bothers me. They wait until you get to the most harrowing part of the roller coaster. The part that's supposed to scare you the most. And they got a camera set up to take your picture at the very moment you should be terrified the most. And when you get off the ride, the first thing they're going to do is not only show you the picture, they want to show you the picture in hopes that you will buy the picture. That means you done lived through it. Now you got to look at it, buy it, take it home, and keep on looking at it. They went through that roller coaster, made it all the way to the end. Dr. Sampson was praying the whole way that they would survive. When they got off the roller coaster, they announced to them, we have a photograph. of the two of you as you rode this roller coaster. Two people in the photograph, Dr. Sampson and his 13-year-old daughter. The circumstances were completely different. Dr. Sampson's eyes are closed so tightly until he had snatched his forehead down beyond his eyelids because he was so terrified. His daughter, however, had her eyes wide open, her mouth screaming, both hands raised to the sky. And Dr. Sampson said, would you look at this? How is it that your eyes are open while my eyes are closed? Your hands are up while my hands are down. Your mouth is open while my teeth and jaws are clenched. His daughter said, Daddy, look closer at the picture. He said, I see everything. I see my eyes slammed shut. I see my jaws and teeth clenched together. My body is tense. She said, Daddy, don't look at your eyes. Don't look at your forehead. Don't look at your teeth and jaws. Look at your arms. And when he looked at his arms, he had one hand wrapped around the safety bar and had the other hand wrapped around his daughter. And his daughter said, Daddy, you want to know why my hands were up? You want to know why my eyes were open? You want to know why my mouth was open? It's because while you were holding on to the bar with one hand, you were holding on to me with the other hand, and I had nothing to fear. That's what a good daddy does. You hold on to God with one hand, and you hold on to your family with the other hand. So that even when you're bearing the weight and the burden of living through life, they can keep their hands up. They can keep their eyes open. They can keep their mouth with a praise and a scream.
Thank you.
You know why? Because there ain't no daddy like the one I got. And all the people say, Amen. Standing